Guys, today I've got my friend Alex Schlinsky on the podcast. Alex is the founder of Sky Social Media and Prospecting on Demand. Alex, could you kind of tell the audience a little bit more about the agency and what you guys do and how you serve those?
Yeah, absolutely. And we definitely didn't do like 10 minutes of potting without a record button test. That definitely didn't happen. Like this is totally live and we're not asking any questions again. No, not at all. So yeah, my agency, Sky Social Media, I've been running it since 2010. The kind of inception of it is really funny and unique. Like one of the little talking points I say when I'm at events, Monica, is, I ran an agency for 4 years and I didn't know. So I actually went to school initially with the intention of becoming an attorney. And so I did an externship right before my senior year of high school with my next door neighbor who is an attorney. And my intention and goal was like learn about, his career and kind of move forward with that. And I lived in a very coddling environment, I would say, in a positive way. But of course, there's some challenges of not having any like school of hard knocks lessons. And he told me the first day I ever worked with him, he's like, being an attorney is the worst. I hate it. I hate this life. I wish I didn't do this. And I'd never had anyone talk to me like that before. And I was very impressionable, I think about 17 years old. And it really changed my perspective on things. So I worked with him for 2 months. I remember what he paid me was a PlayStation 3. That's how he paid me, which at that time was amazing. Now in retrospect, you're like, look, I kind of got the
not a great deal
here. But then I was like, this is amazing. You want to know how old I am? I remember where we bought it was Blockbuster, which is even funnier. Makes it even more funny. But anyway,
so you can't return it.
Exactly. So in general, Facebook had just kind of released business pages then as they were setting up to become like an ads platform, because originally it wasn't, right? It was just social media. And the way that they were doing it was by, if you post on your business page, huge amount of local reach, basically free advertising, by like, hey, this might be a page you enjoy, right? Whether it's a restaurant or an attorney or whatever it may be. So I posted for him, once a day for every month of the summer and then the beginning of senior year of high school. And he was like, oh, I'm getting some cases from this. I'm going to pay you to continue doing this and send emails on Constant Contact, was his email platform back then. So he was paying me $1,000 a month during college to do that. And that was technically the start of my agency, right? Okay. So I started a company, Sky Social Media. And from that, he sent me, a few other friends of his that became clients too. And so senior year of high school, I was making a little bit of money. And then when I went to college, I needed to finance college a bit without ideally going into massive debt. So what he did was I asked him, if you know anyone that's in Orlando that's an attorney. He sent me like 10 attorneys across the US. And I remember I studied all these like sales books. I read like everything from Warren Clough. I watched like tons of videos online. I was a big Tim Ferriss fan back then. Not that I'm not anymore. He's still great. But back then in the beginning of my entrepreneurship, I was like, this is amazing. And I remember like prepping and getting all ready for these calls. And then I get on the call and they'll be like, oh, you're Lloyd's guy, right? Yeah. How much did you pay? $1,000? Cool. Okay. So I'll pay you that. What are we doing? It was like the opposite. It was the anti-sale. Like it was just a referral. And I had never understood the concept of inbound or outbound or referrals, or I didn't know anything about this. So I had prepped for all this and there was no sale to do. It's just like, yeah, you're Lloyd's guy. Okay. I'll pay you $1,000 a month. What are you doing for me for $1,000?
Right.
What is going on?
Price point. It's like they're just like, whatever, like $1,000 for marketing.
It's like the coin in their pocket basically. Right. Yeah. So here you go, whatever. So I was posting on them for basically the end of senior year, but mostly going into college. And so my wife and I, with my girlfriend at the time, we were waking up early every morning before class, and we were like getting posts from, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, because these are all PI attorneys, and just posting on all of these attorneys. I think we had like 10, 12 attorneys at a time, making like $10,000, $12,000 a month.
Wow.
We're the smartest people in the world. Like, no, obviously. And then it all flipped up on our head, right? About a year later, after making some good money and being a stupid college student and spending that money on stupid things, as you can imagine, not saving it, not investing it, because I was an idiot. Unfortunately, I wish someone told me about Bitcoin. Come on, no one helped me out. Yeah. But anyways, we ad platform came out, and as soon as that came out, tanked the whole, outreach model. And then they weren't getting cases anymore, and slowly but surely it kind of died off. So we started to try to learn about ads, but it was hard to do that while in school. So like there was kind of a 2-year period towards the end of school, like junior and senior year of college, that It wasn't going super well, but we were still making some money, $3,000 to $5,000 a month, and trying to do ads, but just failing very miserably at it. When we graduated, that's when we really started growing and started learning how to run the ads and build a really real agency. So that's why I say like 4 years didn't even know I had an agency.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that was like the school of hard knocks, the early days.
Exactly.
But also, like, I mean, talk about like crushing it as a college student, and
Amazing.
I mean, making 10 to 12,000 a month as a college student, that is kind of unfathomable.
My ego was just, oh boy, very unsavory, just very unsavory.
It's good to see you grew out of that.
Oh, for sure. And I think I knew it also then, but I just was like, I'm just gonna walk tall, baby. I'm gonna walk tall. I'm 5'5" and I'm walking tall. I wish I wasn't like that, honestly, but yeah, that's what happens when you've never made money before and now you're suddenly making money and you're like, how did this happen? It's kind of crazy.
The best thing that can happen is that you get humbled early and quickly, so that you learn from that, and you then become the better version of yourself.
Well, Monica, the first time I had a real sales call, right, like with a real attorney. So I used to go in person to attorneys' offices once I started understanding ads. So we hired some people, right? This is towards the end of school. Started understanding ads, being able to realize, we could like charge a lot more for this, $3,000 to $5,000. I would go into offices. I'd bring Dunkin' Donuts with me. I'd go in there and I'd be like, look, like, let me talk to them for 5 minutes. I promise it'll be valuable. No one comes in person, right? They're like, no one ever comes. And I'd get rejected probably 50% of the time, but sometimes I would go in and I would get opportunities to sell. And I remember this one particular one, Monica, that was insane. We go in and he's like, okay, so you brought donuts, you brought a bribe. What's your offer? I'll give you 3 minutes. So I give him my spiel. I do my thing and I'm feeling myself, Monica. I'm like, I'm on fire. That flame behind you, that was on my head. I'm like, I got this. I'm closing this deal. It's going to work. So he goes, so he's a PI attorney. So at the end, he goes, okay, this sounds good. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to you for 3 months, but I'm not going to pay you for the service. Here's what's going to happen. I'll pay for the ads. As soon as I get a single case from this, I will pay you double what you're asking for, which I don't remember what it was. I think maybe $1,500 was I was asking for. So you're saying I'll pay you $3,000 if you give me one case. I'll pay for all the ads though. You don't have to do you don't have to pay for the ads. I'll do that as long as you give me one case. Which I didn't know anything about negotiation then. That wasn't a thing. I just knew like hold fast. I think I had just read Never Split the Difference or whatever. And I'm like, this is what I offered. So I did the stupidest possible thing. I was like, so look, let's say I came in here, right, as a potential client. I got into a car accident. I'm asking you to, represent me as my attorney. And I say, but I'm only going to pay you if you win the case. Like, what would you say to that? He's like, that's exactly what we do. You only pay me if I win the case. I blacked out. Like, I don't remember what happened after that. Yeah. Pretty confident that he wasn't a client, but I totally blacked out. Fastest I've ever felt like more stupid in my life. I don't think I've ever felt more dumb. I genuinely really don't remember what happened after, other than just like massive panic, flop sweat, like just totally feeling like an absolute idiot. But hey, you gotta look like an idiot and be humbled in order to get better. So that's how I had to learn from it.
Yeah, the more at-bats you get, the better you get. So it's okay. So did you end up, that's actually not a bad offer. He was going to give you the money to get the case.
I know, I'm an idiot. I, of course, should have taken it.
Well, whatever, you figured it out.
So no, I don't think we worked together. I think he was just like, yeah, you're dumb. Like, leave. I think that's what happened. I really don't remember. I remember
getting donuts with you.
Yeah, I remember getting in the car and calling my wife and being like, well, that was embarrassing and humbling. And then I went home instead. I was like, should I go to another one? She's like, just come home. So I remember going home. I do remember that. Remember driving home being like, that was so embarrassing. it was rough, man. It was rough. Getting rejected in person is like rough. It is rough. It's
definitely worse than Zoom.
Yeah, I think I was 20, maybe 19. Very hot-headed, very full-headed. Like, I'm the best of the best, which of course I wasn't. But I felt like I needed that energy in order to match what the attorney expected, right? So it just didn't work. But I did keep doing that later on, and it worked very well. I got several clients doing that model. It was just exhausting, and I think like the stress got to me. Like, I created a lot of fear for me that I don't think was super comfortable for me to manage, like mental health wise. And I stopped doing it, even though the result was good. Just like I remember like panic attacks, hyperventilating in the car before walking into it. And you're like, maybe this isn't the greatest idea,
But probably in some way, obviously it was formative. And in the early days of the agency, it doesn't matter if what you're doing isn't totally scalable. It's just about getting off the ground and 100%. Being in the business and then being able to iterate and learn. So
no doubt.
I just want to share some fast facts, just to brag a little bit about you. Current revenue, total revenue, 7 million.
Yes,
right?
sir.
7 million, very impressive. 5 million on the agency, 2 million on pod.
Yes.
So clearly, the donut trick, you figured something out, right? Things came to a head, and you slowly figured out how to build a proper agency model out of that. So what I think is so cool about your model is that you basically sell cases to the agencies. So that means that you have to have a predictable CAC for yourself.
That's right.
That is lower than what you're reselling it to the agency for. I'm sorry, to the lawyer for.
Yes.
And I'm curious in that, like, have you ever had clients that you've taken on where you can't get the CAC?
Oh, of course. 100%. So we're very transparent to all the attorneys, because like what we find is, so like I coach sales, right? Like in POD, that's a big thing I do. And there's like this framework that I go through called the ACT method, the ACT method, right? Authenticity, confidence, and transparency. Authenticity is the truth behind your words. Confidence is the belief that what you are promising and to deliver, that you will do everything you can to deliver, right? And transparency is the amount that you're willing to share. Knowing my market and understanding that attorneys are like very fickle, they are a bit sanctimonious, not all of them, but in general, like anyone that goes to school for a longer amount of time than others, masters, MDs, JDs, PsyDs, you know, they deserve, and I think, some way to be a little bit sanctimonious. That doesn't mean being rude and self-righteous, but like having some level of ego, like they've earned some of this, right? And so inherently when that happens, they look upon the vendors strictly as vendors, not in any relational context. And then secondarily, they're like, what are you getting from this? Like, what's your cut? Because their business is all transparent cut. You get 30% pre-litigation for PI attorneys and 40% post-litigation for PI attorneys. It's all transparent. So it's like, this is what I'm making from you. So I was like, why don't I use that? Because I feel like no one is doing that. And that's the transparency angle. And so I would tell that to my attorneys, like, hey, just so you know, like, our goal, right, by packaging this product for you, so meaning we're doing the lead generation, we're doing the intake qualification, we're signing the retainer, and then we're sending it to you, right? These 4 steps, essentially, we're doing all of these for you. Our responsibility and goal is, can we, for our family, get a 20% margin? If we're at 20% margin, you're going to make a lot of money. We'll make good money. Our family will be provided for, and we're all good. Anytime I say that to the attorney, it's so shocking to them because they're not used to any level of that type of transparency that makes them much more willing to say, that's fair. It's kind of hard for an attorney to say, that's unfair, when one, you make more money, and two, like, hello, I'm running a business. It's not, I'm trying to gouge you. I'm not trying to take 80% of the cut. I'm trying to make enough for me and my family to build a company. And everyone respects that and understands that. And that has been
20% also super reasonable. Like, it's not like you're like a 50% margin.
No, and I say around that, right? Because like, it's not true that everyone is 20%. Some of them are 7, some of them are 30, right? It's very rare for us to be above that number, depending on like the tort and everything. But there's many cases we take on at the beginning where we don't know about, you know, what the numbers are going to be. So like, for example, there's a new mass tort coming in line for ultra processed foods, which is going to be a big mass tort like over the next 10 years. But we have no idea what it's going to cost at all. So we have to do market research, see what the competitors are offering. And we don't know if they're just pulling a number from thin air or they've already had cases for it, but we don't have any cases for it. So we're like, okay, $1,250. So now we're hoping that we can get the cases at, you know, 900, but we literally have no idea. So we did a case a couple months ago where we got a $50,000 deal, right? And I mean, we spent like 55,000 and couldn't even deliver all the cases. So we lost like 10 grand from it. And it sucked, you know, it sucked. So we told the attorney straight up, and you know what the attorney did? They said, oh, that's a bummer. Hey, what about this case? Do you know this case? We're like, yeah. Then he paid us $100,000 because we were truthful. And we ended up making like $25,000, $30,000 from that case. It's like amazing. So we're like, look how honesty and vulnerability and transparency takes you. And I love that too. Cause like as a dad, you know, that's like, that's what I want. Like that's some virtue I want to imbue upon my son and who I want to be known as. Certainly I'm not perfect by any means, but I like to consider myself as being an honest and ethical person. And it's worked out really well in business too.
Yeah, I think there's also an aspect of that, which is vulnerability. When you tell them, look, we tried this and it didn't work. It didn't work for us, which means it wouldn't have worked for you.
Sure. 100%.
They're used to being the one to spend the money and then trying to make it back through marketing. And so when you're the one advancing and taking risk in that, there should be some level of gratefulness and appreciation where they're like, look, if you figured out how to make a business that works, where you're taking a wedge and you're able to run a profitable business and you're able to deliver leads at a cost that is significantly less for us than the LTV of our case, for them, it's a no-brainer, right?
100%. And it's why the sales is easy. The thing about the industry that's unique is the market is really small of litigating attorneys. So it's mostly non-mass tort attorneys that connect with litigating attorneys and they get a piece of the settlement. So it's been an interesting thing where most of the sale actually is a lot of like education, which I'm not very used to, honestly, in selling in all the other products. Like my coaching products, there's not a lot of education necessary. Like most people that want coaching product understand the benefit of here's a direct yellow brick road line to success versus wandering through the forest blindfolded, kind of an easy framework to understand. And then the attorneys on, PI side, they're like, yeah, we buy cases, we buy cases, we get it. But when you're an attorney that's investing into a different case type, there's so much education. And so I've had to learn a lot more about the market probably for this than I've had to learn for anything else that I've ever sold before, which has been a really interesting thing and mostly very scary because, mass torts basically is like everything is trying to kill you and everything is bad, which sucks. But other than that, it's been great. Your weed killer is trying to kill you. Your shampoo is trying to kill you. Your food is trying to kill you. The cities are trying to kill you. The water that you're drinking, it's great.
Yeah. The news is trying to kill you as well.
Everything.
Your iPhone's trying to kill you.
Every single thing.
It's probably made you a little bit jaded and also probably a little more protective.
It's so morbid
around your family.
It's unbelievably morbid. I mean, it's literally unbelievably morbid. But I mean,
this is part of our society, right? This is part of the world we live in. So that's amazing. Really cool agency, really cool model, really fascinating. So what was it that brought Pod to life? Why did you decide Pod needed to exist?
I appreciate that question. So I grew up an Orthodox Jew in a very tight-knit community, going to temple every weekend, Friday night dinners for Sabbath. And my family was very much into the idea of that biblical, like, do upon others as you want to be done to yourself, and like invite people in as family every single Friday night, no matter what. My mom would have, guests over. And it was so funny. Like, this is a Jewish mom trope that you may or may not know, but some of your listeners might, where it's like they complain about having to have the guests from Monday through Friday at 2:00. And then as soon as they get in, oh my God, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. Then they leave. Oh my God, why did they come? I have so much to clean. That was my life, which is so funny. Yeah. But my mom and my dad are both very hospitable people and like very giving. Like both of them would be absolutely like stranger that needs the shirt more than them. They would do that. And I love that as like a quality that I have taken on and as a quality of, community that I think is critical. Cause like at the end of the day, there's so many lines that divide us, right? Racially, socially, religion, but there's one line that always puts us together, which is we're all humans at the end of the day. And when we could put down the pitchfork for a second and maybe care for one another, give a little bit of empathy, maybe for once ever give benefit of the doubt, maybe just once, I think there's just a lot of amazing things that can happen. And so growing up in that environment and then becoming an entrepreneur was very hard for me because I ended up being behind a computer all day and very alone. And there's no one that understands this. All of my friends went to traditional routes. They became accountants or attorneys or doctors or HVAC or like regular jobs. And no one I knew became an entrepreneur. And I'm just alone. And digital marketing wasn't a thing. I came up at the start of it, right? From like the transition of this is a traditional media thing to now ClickFunnels is promising you could literally make an entire new company from one funnel away. And I'm like, what in the world? This is crazy. So like, I didn't have that paradigm. So as soon as that happened, I was looking for like community. And when you search community online from SEO or ads, mastermind comes into play. And again, I never heard of that word. I don't know what that means. What's the paradigm of mastermind? Then I join a mastermind and instantaneously you're like, oh, family, oh, community, oh, they get me. But again, like being in someone else's, it's just, I was meant to lead. That's who I am at the core. So inherently, as soon as I was involved in one, it was like, I need this. I have to make this. I have to make this as soon as possible. And that was the onus of making POD for a community, for a place of belonging and support and love, because I love meeting strangers and making them close friends and helping them impact their families and life. And we've done amazing work. I mean, we've been in business for 9 years and have literally changed thousands of people's lives. The amount of affirmation that we've been given in that time frame is just incredible. And we're in this interesting timeline, Monik, that's really special for me of the journey. So I'll be super vulnerable with you and your listeners because I think it's very valuable. I'm a person of like deep affirmation and like pouring into people and holding space for people. That's my style. It's who I want to be. And so when you create this environment, and community, inherently like time progresses and people move on. And I don't think I had this concept that POD was meant to be a bridge. A bridge takes someone from where they are to where they want to be. People don't live on a bridge. But I had created in my mind this idea of this church of capitalism that I had created, and we'll forever be here and grow old together, and which of course inherently is inappropriate and not true and not what really happened. And I think losing these legacy clients, not just the money that hurt, but the relationships ending business-wise, of course not personally, but when you don't work with someone in business, the relationship changes. And that really hurt me. It really affected me so deeply mentally that in a way that I really did not expect, that made my company much harder to run from probably like 23 to now. And a year ago, I was very close to selling the business, very close. I didn't because actually a former client came to me after he sold his agency and said, do you have a job for me to be a coach? That former client, Richard Sargent, is now the head of client success, and he's championing the community. And now he's created this entire new community that's in his vision. And we were on the session last night, and the camaraderie is amazing. And he's leading it, and watching these former clients I had, understanding the culture, community, and vibe we were trying to make. Now they're championing it. It's the most unbelievable, like transcendental, fulfilling thing. Like it really is just incredible. And being in that new environment after basically like 18 months of deep emotional pain, frankly, it's been really awesome. Honestly, it's been really, really cool.
That's awesome, Alex. And what was the big shift there? Like what got you out of that mode where you were like, look, I just gotta dump this thing because it's just too painful to lose the community as they grow through it and they walk on the bridge. What was the big shift that took place for you? You said it was affirmation.
I would say the big shift was understanding of provisions, right? So I understand 4 provisions. My responsibility first and foremost is to myself, because I cannot provide to anybody else if I can't provide for myself and pour into myself. Number 2 is my family. So most importantly, my wife and my child. Number 3 is my team, because they sacrifice their time for our mission and POD. And then number 4 is our clients. And so for my provisions, my agency took care financially for myself and my family, but it did not take care of my team or my clients. So my team is why I stuck with POD, because I shared with them what I wanted to do. And they said, no, like, don't do it. Like, let us build this, right? You step out, and we go through the hurdles of you becoming a real business owner. Because POD for a long time was not like a coaching company, like in a strategic sense. It was just like Alex's church of capitalism, basically. And Alex is the preacher, pastor, rabbi, and like leading it. But then what if that rabbi or leader or pastor needs to step out and there's a new person running it? And that's hard. It's hard to do that. Sure. And that's what we did. And we made that change. And now I'm in a leadership role as a real CEO, instead of like doing and carrying everything. Instead of like holding space for 50 people, I could hold space for a smaller few, knowing that the team can hold space. And so that was the big transition, like trusting the team and delegating and watching how, leaders aren't supposed to win for themselves. They're supposed to help and watch other people win. And that's the big thing that really changed. And it's been an unbelievable experience watching our team deliver this incredible experience for our clients. Because really we come down to thinking about 2 things for retention, like KPIs. One is 100% within our control, which is basically like client experience, feeling like there's a family, there's a culture, there's a camaraderie, we're amenable, we care for you, we're helpful. We have this CHAMP model that we go through. That's an acronym for being caring, helpful, available, motivating, and proactive. These are things all within our control that we can provide, and everyone has a good experience no matter what. The second thing is getting results, right? If you have a good experience and you make money, you don't leave, right? Inherently getting results is less, our responsibility, as it is more the responsibility of the client showing up and doing the work, even if we hold them accountable and motivate them.
And these are the agencies. Right.
Exactly.
The agency owners, right.
Exactly. So watching, the team take on those responsibilities with me doing a little bit less over the last really like 6 to 12 months. So I really just do sales coaching now in POD because I love it. I love sales coaching. I'm just obsessed with it. I love it. I love it. I'll never stop doing it. But watching the team do the rest and then getting these wins, I think irresponsibly or egotistically for a long time, I was like, only I am the one that can do that. I'm the only one that can do it, which of course is not true. And watching them do it has been amazing, honestly, amazing.
Amazing. Dan Martell had to do something similar with his community. as he grew it with SaaS Academy. And I think, and I've also we've had to learn about this with our SEO theory community, which is, in the early days, it was a very heavy lift for me to manage all the curriculum, all the energy, manage how every single person is feeling, and keep building the community that way. And then thankfully I had a lot of help from my team. So Armand and Laura and Fidan, the other folks that people have seen on the podcast. And that helped so much so that I could step away for the weeks where I needed to fill my cup away, whether it's skiing or being with family or just having like a little bit of a pause to just kind of get new inspiration. And then when I come back to it, I'm just guns a-blazing, full steam, all in. But it's important to be able to have that shared responsibility, especially in this community context, because in a community, people need help today sometimes or this week, and they need to talk to someone, and you have to be available for that. So
100%. The difference also is like, I don't want to run a cult, which has an emblematic leader, right? I want to run a community, which is everyone's involved. And that is, I think, the big shift in POD over the last year and a half.
Okay. Help me understand. So you've taken a lot of agency owners from, like, I guess the starting line, like uninitiated, like pretty much cold to digital marketing, to developing successful agencies. Yes. What's the process that you follow? And tell me some success stories.
Yeah, I think the easiest framework that I do is just like the amount of responsibilities in human beings, like in a general sense, is so incredibly overwhelming. Like, just let alone business responsibilities, personal responsibilities of like, did I pay my bills? Did I pick up food for dinner? Like, is my kid's curriculum correct? Like, did I do everything right? Just on the personal side, it can be overwhelming, let alone business where did I follow up with that lead? And did I do that thing? And did I hit the deadline? And did I prospect today? And did I reach back out on LinkedIn? It's so overwhelming. And I find most people just like feel themselves just walking blindfolded in the forest, having no idea where to go, uncertain of everything, not trusting themselves. When you don't trust yourself, pretty much you're guaranteed to lose. If you can't trust yourself, like, there's no possible way you can win. I like pouring into people that can't trust themselves to get them to the level of trusting themselves. But it's a intermediate Band-Aid. You have to eventually trust yourself. And so I frame it in an easier way of like, metaphorically, if you're looking at a wall, and that wall has all sorts of levers on it, big, small, different colors, some rusted, some shiny. And the levers have a little label maker on it. And it says, message on LinkedIn and call Fred back and pick up your kid from school and, build this offer and make that VSL. And you're like, which one do I pull? And this is why people have such a hard time linearly getting to a specific path or goal, because inherently, one, they don't even have a goal. They're just like living through the tides of life and like letting the tidal wave of it just kind of wash over them. And they're just either living someone else's goal or just kind of going through the motions, paycheck to paycheck. The big thing that I do is have them step out and re-own their agency. And I don't mean agency like the business. I mean agency as like choice, like, which is our greatest gift, right? So some people watching this may or may not know, but I had open heart surgery when I was 29 years old, 4 years ago, when my wife was 5 months pregnant. My son was born 117 days after the surgery. Thank God I was alive for that, but I almost died. And I think the realization was, getting a second shot at this, meaning, waking up on the other end, was like, man, I really have to take ownership of my trajectory, not let someone else do it. Because I think I just fed into the idea of Tim Ferriss says this is success. That's what success is. Tony Robbins says this is success. So that's what success is. Only to come to realization that truly the only way to define success is by doing the deep work of identifying what will make you individually happy. And most people just don't do that, Monik. They don't do it either out of fear of unknowing, or they don't do it because they're lazy, or they don't have the time or energy to do it. So they just go through the motions.
It's a hard question to ask.
100%. And so what I ask people is like, who wins in a race, a short distance runner or a long distance runner? Well, inherently, the only way to know is what race are they running? And so inherently I ask them, what race are you running? They have no idea. They don't know. They don't have an answer. They're just like trying to get through Tuesday. It's like, well, I hear that, but there needs to be time and space where we can figure out what race we're running, because inherently there's this enigma for entrepreneurs, but humans in general, but particularly entrepreneurs, of I'm behind. We hear this a lot. Like, I'm behind. AI, I'm behind. High level, I'm behind. This thing, I'm behind. This project, I'm behind. You can't inherently be behind something pragmatically, right? Emotionally, of course, but pragmatically, you can't be behind on anything that you don't know what it means to be on track, or you don't know what it means to be ahead, right? So it's just a trick that your brain is going to play on you saying, I'm behind, when inherently you don't have any data to prove that insight. So you just kind of wallow in self-pity, self-loathing, self-frustration until you hit some like magic goal that you made up and sucks. So I simplify all of these kind of mental trash that we see, and overwhelm, frankly, is the easiest way to say it, with 4 simple things, right? Understanding what your offer is, what prospecting framework you're doing, how to sell, and how to fulfill. If you know those 4 things, right, in a simple way and break them down in that way, you'll be able to win. Do I have an offer that makes sense to the market? Do I know how to generate prospects predictably? Can I convert those prospects into clients and can fulfill upon the promise that I've sold them? If you know those 4 things, that's how we operate. But before that, the prerequisite is what I call define, design, and do. And I wrote this in my book, The Anti-Hustler's Handbook. And I also have like training for it in the program. But the easiest way is like we force every client before they start doing to define it and design it. So we define what's your ideal life? What's your ideal goals? What do you want to accomplish, right? And even if you shoot for the stars and land on the moon, a lot of you might end up realizing you're very happy on the moon. So you're like, I want a Bugatti. And then you end up a year and a half later with this Jeep, Grand Cherokee. And you're like, I love this car. I'm so happy. Well, that's great. That's fine. That's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
Then you design it. You build a milestone, like a framework, right? Like there's summits to the peak. Like when you're climbing Everest, you don't just climb it straight. You go on a very specific path, and there's summits. You have to have that summit. Like, okay, so you get your first client, then you hit 10K, then you hit 25, then you delegate, then you hit 50, then you go to 85, then you go to 100. Build the path and with a real trajectory so you know if you're behind or if you're on track or you're ahead, because inherently your brain's going to tell you you're behind because your brain is going to punish you because that's how it's built and wired for most people, at least. And then you do. Most people just skip defining and designing. They just do. And they're wondering why they're struggling and stressed and why, a year ago they'd be so happy if they were at 8,000 and now they're at 8,000 and they hate their life. Why? It's because there's no actual intention on anything we're doing. So simplification, intention, define, design, do, offer, prospecting, sales, fulfillment. Those are the models.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. Really, really well thought through there. And I agree. I think every agency has to have those 4 fundamental components dialed in. And 100%. The more aware you are of what they are, the more consciously and deliberately you can iterate and solve each one in turn, because you really, it's tough to work on all 4 simultaneously. It's often easier just to
no doubt
first figure out, okay, this is going to be my offer that I'm going to roll with. I'm going to test this for a month. I'm going to see how it goes.
That's right.
I'm going to do this strategy for lead generation. It may not be super scalable, but I'm going to do it to get to my first 10K month, right? If I'm just starting out, and then consciously go through the steps. When you coach agencies, for the ones that started from zero, let's say they get to like a couple million, so they're multi-7-figure, what do you see their key pain points looking like? And
when they hit the 2 millions or at the beginning?
When they hit the 2-3 millions, yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is pretty much the same every single time. And it's related to like leadership and delegation. The mindset of like, I could do this better myself is pretty cancerous in business.
For sure.
One, like the talent of like understanding leadership and like watching the people you hire do what you do better than you maybe even is really, really hard. I would say 99% of the people that I work with that get towards that 50K first before the hit to the $1 million run rate of 84,000. That's the big challenge. Going from like freelance model where like I'm Atlas Shrugged, I'm carrying the load, I'm the one that did all of it, to I need to have a team do it, and then letting them do it and also letting them fail, because they will, just like you, just like anyone else. No one does it perfectly every time. Same thing I teach my clients. It's like, of course I don't close every deal, right? I don't make every objection done correctly. I don't do everything right, because I'm a person, like I also make the same mistake sometimes twice, which sucks, but hey, that's also life. Like it's just part of it. I think there's a lot of platitudes that go along with like being an entrepreneur, of like what consistency means, showing up every single day and never making a mistake and being rigid. It's like, you're not a Marine, like you're not a Marine, you're just not, unless you are a Marine, which fine. But like, most people are not for a good reason, because it's really hard, it's really, really hard. So I think the biggest thing I would say pretty consistently is like managing operations at that level and understanding that there's a very different operational capacity needed. And hiring someone of that talent is hard, because usually that type of talent's at minimum $120,000 a year salary, if not more. And most people are like, but I could do it. And you're like, no, dude, you can't do it. You need them. You need them right now. And so I think there's some really good companies out there that coach great operations stuff. One in Salt Lake particularly, but in general, like, I think that's the big thing that's hard for people, like operations at that scale, and delegation to like any of the talent, whether it's sales, appointment setting, or media buying, or client success management. All of those things are hard for people at that $1 to $2 million rate.
For sure. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they keep solving problems with the how methodology. So like, how do I become a better media buyer? How do I improve my SEO? How do I make this funnel convert? And it's a how. And if you're unpacking the how, then you're getting very, very little progress, because those how problems take a lot of time.
100%.
Invariably, when I meet people that are in this industry of digital marketing agencies, the smallest agencies are the guys who are always in the lab, who are constantly tinkering, who are the how guys, and they just want to figure out the how. The biggest agencies are the ones that are who are like looking at the problem and saying, who do I need to hire to do this, to figure this out?
Who, not how. It's brilliant. Yeah. No, and I totally agree. And it's frustrating also for those that are in the lab. Like, I think there's an inherent disadvantage to someone that knows media buying that wants to build a marketing agency, because they just won't stay clutch to the pearls, man. Yeah. Like, I never knew media buying, so I had an advantage, because I was like, there's no way I'm learning this. I don't want to learn this. This sucks. I'm going to hire someone to do it. Right. I think delegating sales is easier than delegating media buying. It was hard still for me because of my ego and like, I could do it, but like, it's easier. Yeah. And there's a lot more talented people out there that can do sales versus this very unique skill that you need to have for being a media buyer, especially so if you're already very, very good at it. It's like, how am I going to give this up? And that's why they stay freelancing. They stay at the $10,000 to $30,000 mark, because that's kind of what they can manage by themselves as their career, which, look, I don't think Monica or I are saying that that's not okay. If that's good for you, that's good. But it's like, if you want more, it is the big problem and challenge is, are you willing to let these other people fail? Because you probably won't find someone as good as you right away. But if you can coach them and understand the ramifications and collateral damage of losing a client or not getting as a great result for a client, that's what it's going to take to get the next stage. And it's hard.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with having an agency 10 to 30. But the thing that I think is dangerous about it is that unless your agency is growing, it's shrinking, right? Oh, and sure. You're going to lose clients. You're going to churn. As the market becomes more competitive, you're going to be positioned worse than you could be otherwise. So really important to figure out how do you keep the growth going, and how do you keep evolving individually as a person? Because so much of this is, if you don't master the inner world, the inner game, the company just stays flat and it plateaus.
A great book called Inner Game of Tennis by, I think it's Eckhart Tolle. I apologize, that's not correct, but it's a really, really good book. I strongly recommend anyone listening to it to read that. It's very relevant to what you're talking about.
Alex, appreciate this conversation so much. And I'm sorry we didn't have enough time, but a lot of gold, a lot of great insight today. For those who want to follow you a little bit and learn more about your work, how should they find you online?
Yeah, I mean, prospectingondemand.com is probably the easiest way. I'm on every social platform. I do a lot of short form content. I'm trying to do more long form content. It's just so hard. It's like such a time consuming thing to do. But I really want to do it. It's definitely a commitment I have. So you can find me anywhere on any of the socials. If you search me, I have a very unique last name. So there's pretty much none of the other ones. And my family don't do any entrepreneur stuff. So you'll see me, Alex Schlinsky, on all the platforms, and however I can support or help, I'm there for you.
Awesome. We'll also pop all that into the show notes. Alex, thanks so much for being here today. And we'll put another link to episode 2 when we do it.
Hell yeah, let's do it. Awesome. Monica, so good to see you, man. Thank you guys so much for having me. Everyone out there that's listening, just remember this. You're loved. You're cared for. You're doing a good job. Keep it up. You got this.
Good pep talk, Alex. Thanks.